On citizenship and immigration. Today, we will continue our study on the conditions faced by the asylum seekers. I just want to confirm that all witnesses have conducted the required technical tests in preparation for this meeting. Okay. I would like for today's meeting, in our first panel, we have the officials from IRCC. I would like to welcome Ms. Christine Fox, Deputy Minister, Mr. Scott Harris, Associate Deputy Minister, Jason Holman, Acting Director General, Asylum Policy, and Michelle Kingsley, Assistant Deputy Minister, Operations. The officials will have 5 minutes for their opening remarks. Ms. Fox, will you be doing the opening remarks? Ms. Fox, you have the floor. You can begin. You will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, and then we will go into round of questioning.
Parfait. Merci beaucoup. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Here on the traditional and unceded territories of the Algonquin Anishinaabe peoples. Je suis Christiane Fox, sous-ministre d'immigration.
I am Christiane Fox, Deputy Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, IRCC. I would like to thank the committee for the invitation to appear. I am joined by Scott Harris, Michelle Kingsley, and Jason Hellman. Canada is a destination of choice for individuals coming from across the world for opportunities for work and quality of life. We have seen significant demand to come to Canada. We offer many job opportunities and an exceptional quality of life.
With 2021 being a record-setting year for permanent immigration with over 405,000 new permanent residents. 2022 admissions are expected to pass 2021 in most immigration programs, including permanent residency, student visas, refugees, and family reunifications. Et lorsque Canada a levé ses mesures.
And when Canada lifted its pandemic-related border measures earlier this fall, there was a renewed surge of asylum seekers, in particular at Roxham Road.
Canada's asylum system and refugee resettlement program are separate. The asylum system is for people making refugee protection claims from within Canada. Trois organisations, la Commission de...
There are 3 organizations, the Immigration and Refugee Board, IRB, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, IRCC, and the Canada Border Services Agency, CBSA, who share the mandate for the asylum system. Additionally, the RCMP plays an active role in policing the border between points of entry.
An asylum seeker entering a point of entry would be met by a CBSA officer. For irregular arrivals, an RCMP officer is the first point of contact upon crossing into Canada before being transferred to CBSA to process their claim. IRCC traite les demandes.
IRCC handles asylum claims by individuals already in Canada temporarily, possibly as a student or a visitor, who then decides to seek asylum.
Asylum seekers can make their claim of a port of entry upon arrival or online if already in Canada. If IRCC or CBSA determines an individual is eligible to make an asylum claim, the claim is then referred to the IRB to assess whether the claimant requires Canada's protection. Les personnes dont la demande...
Individuals whose refugee claims are determined to be well-founded by the IRB receive protected person status in Canada and can apply for permanent residency.
Individual's refugee claim is determined to not be well-founded. CBSA oversees the removal process. The individuals are released on condition to report for a future removal proceeding, which is managed by the CBSA. Alors, le système d'asile du Canada a été mis à...
Canada's asylum system has been under significant strain due to sustained high numbers of asylum claimants seeking our country's protection. This year, Canada has already received over 62,000 asylum claims.
Continues to urge individuals to seek asylum in the first safe country they enter after fleeing persecution, as per the Safe Third Country Agreement, and not to resort to irregular crossings. Irregular routes can be dangerous, and individuals may be subject to exploitation. Cependant, nous reconnaissons...
However, we do recognize that a large number of individuals have continued to enter Canada irregularly at Roxham Road.
The government has set up capabilities to process arrivals, conduct security verifications, health screenings, and to ensure that migrants are assessed for eligibility of their applications. IRCC has been working to support CBSA in addressing the backlog to determine eligibility and admissibility to Canada. Le budget 2022
Budget 2022 provided asylum delivery partners with $1.3 billion over 5 years and $331.2 million ongoing to support the long-term stability and integrity of Canada's asylum system. This funding will support a stronger system in the years ahead.
Recognizing that the determination process can take time and higher volumes are causing delays, Canada provides asylum claimants support throughout the process. Depuis le début de la pandémie, le gouvernement
The federal government has been providing temporary shelter to asylum seekers in Quebec and Ontario since the beginning of the pandemic at IRCC-leased hotels.
established to support public health needs by providing newly arrived asymptomatic claimants with an appropriate place to meet quarantine and testing requirements. Mais pour soutenir la province de
To support the province of Quebec and the city of Toronto, where the shelter networks have been overburdened with the increased volumes after November 2021, the government allowed claimants to stay in IRCC-leased hotels until a space was available in a shelter, or claimants secured their own lodging.
The federal government has also provided support to provinces and municipalities through the Temporary Interim Housing Assistance Program to reimburse some of the costs for housing asylum claimants.
If you can wind up, your time is up. If you can take quickly to wind up.
Absolutely. So I think what I would close by saying is that I want to thank the committee for their work to support a very strong asylum system and ensuring Canada remains one of the most welcoming countries in the world, and for your work more broadly. Being new to the department, I've been looking at the reports of the committee, and I look forward to working with all of you and taking your questions today. So thank you very much, Chair. Back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. We will now go into our round of questioning, and we will begin our round of questioning with Mr. McGuire. Mr. McGuire, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm going to direct these questions to Ms. Fox as well. By being a signature, I thank you for your testimony, by the way, as well, but by being a signature of the Safe Third Country Agreement, the Government of Canada's official position is the United States is a safe third country. Do you agree with that statement?
I do agree with that statement, yes.
In the past 12 months, has IRCC ever issued a statement, press release, or circulated anything to foreign media that unequivocally states that in accordance with the Safe Third Country Agreement, individuals currently in the United States should be filing for asylum there rather than walking across the border?
So I should take a look and see. I joined the department in July, and I can say that since July, I have not seen any type of issuance from the department to that nature, but I can definitely do a check. But since I've been here, I have not seen that.
Okay, if you find some, can you table that with the committee?
Absolutely.
All the communications products? Thanks. Are you aware that Minister Goodale stated in 2018 that the Government of Canada wanted to negotiate with the American government to amend the Safe Third Country Agreement?
I think that we always, in working very closely with the United States, we always stay in close contact with officials from the United States to make sure that since the inception of the agreement in 2004...
Excuse me, I've got questions. But were you aware that Minister Goodale in 2018 had made that request?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you ever been part of any conversation on current efforts, this is more likely where you were looking at, to amend the Safe Third Country Agreement?
Our department has been in contact with officials from the United States, yes. I personally have not yet.
And has IRCC ever conducted any analysis or had any discussions on the specific language needed to amend the Safe Third Country Agreement so individuals cannot walk across the border to claim asylum?
IRCC has been looking at the agreement in working with the U.S., absolutely. Have we written any paragraphs in terms of changes to it? Not at this stage, but we have been working very closely on the content.
So you haven't put any specific language down to amend it to stop them from coming across the border?
No, we have not put such a language down.
Can you please ask your officials to inquire if IRCC has produced any reports, memos, or analysis on what would be amended, what would be needed to amend the Safe Third Country Agreement so individuals cannot walk across the border to claim asylum, and table that with this committee.
Yes, we have definitely done some work in that regard, and we can definitely table that with the committee.
So you've had reports, okay. If you could do that, please, that'd be helpful. And are you aware that in 2018, Minister Hussein, after Mr. Goodale, traveled to other countries, such as Nigeria, to discourage people from flying to the United States for the sole purpose of then walking across the border to claim asylum in Canada?
I am aware that ministers did go to, I think you referenced Minister Hussein in Nigeria, to share information about the asylum systems in this country. Yes, absolutely.
And has IRC ever been tasked to arrange for similar trips for the current minister?
Not to my knowledge, no.
In 2017, there was a dramatic increase in people walking across the border to claim asylum. The Liberal government dispatched Mr. Pablo Rodriguez and Mr. Emmanuel Duberge to the United States to communicate to various communities about respecting Canada's asylum system. Are you aware of these past efforts?
Yes, I am.
And I believe these efforts were helpful in encouraging people to not walk across the border to enter Canada. Can you please table with this committee any memos, documents, and reports that IRCC conducted after these trips to determine if they were successful? Do you know if it reduced the flow?
I can take a look at, we can take a look at the data from the flows after visits to see whether or not there's any changes or shifts that would be noteworthy.
The numbers of people crossing into Canada are higher today than they were back in 2017. So to date, has anyone in IRCC been asked to help arrange similar trips for MPs or other officials to discourage and encourage people from not walking across the border to claim asylum?
We have not been asked to arrange such trips.
The numbers of people, though, have increased, correct?
The numbers of people have increased, absolutely.
And your estimate for this year would be, is it the 50,000 that we've heard of at Roxham Road?
Since from January to September, irregular crossings in this country have been at about 27,500. Total from January to September, 62,000. And we are anticipating our projections for the full year of both regular and irregular would be between sort of 84 and 94,000 is sort of the projections at this point.
In 2017, IRCC was specifically monitoring foreign press and other misinformation circulating about Canada's asylum system, which was contributing to the rise of people walking across the border. Is IRCC currently monitoring what is circulating in various media outlets or online about Canada's asylum system?
I think as part of our regular sort of media monitoring, we look at all data and information that could be useful to the department, including any information on asylum.
So can you please table that with the committee, all relevant information that IRCC has collected?
Sorry for interrupting, Mr. McGuire. Your time is up.
Madam Chair, I just wondered if I could get a response to the tabling of that information.
Yes, Ms. Fox.
I guess I'm not quite sure exactly what we would table in terms of all of our media relations activities, our reports. I'm not quite sure exactly what was requested.
Well, just the monitoring of what's being circulated in the various media outlets or online, if you are following it, as I think you indicated you were. I just wanted to know if we could have copies of that tabled for this committee.
Yeah.
So I think we can table. I'll take a look. I mean, I think we can table I'll take a look at the media relations reports and see what's relevant to the question. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now proceed to Mr. Dhaliwal. Mr. Dhaliwal, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin. The floor is yours.
Thank you. And Ms. Fox, Welcome to the new portfolio. And, it's not an easy file. I have dealt with immigration for the last 20 years. I tell you right now, this is one of the most difficult files, and good luck with this and very best to you. I will continue to carry on with my friend Larry's questions on the Safe Third Country Agreement. Is there anything that you wanted to add that you haven't added, that government is open, or is the government open to discussions around modernizing this agreement?
Thank you for the question, and thank you. It is indeed a very complex organization, and I look forward to working with the team here and others. I think what I would say is the objective of the Government of Canada in working with the United States on the Safe Third Country Agreement is really to find a system that is compassionate, fair, and a good way to handle asylum claims. And I think that as we work towards in our bilateral conversations with the United States is a process, an orderly process, for us to work together to ensure that the processing of asylum claims along our shared border is done in a humane way. So I think that's kind of one of the important parts of why it's integral for us to be working in lockstep with the United States.
So it is economically imperative that Canada supports those who are coming to Canada, whether they are coming as immigrants, asylum seekers, or refugees. What are the economic benefit for the entire country because of these people coming to Canada?
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially in light of some of the labor challenges that we're seeing across the country, immigration is a big part of what the Canada's response will be to that. And I think one of the things that I would share with the committee is around the issuance of work permits for asylum seekers. And I think that's an important part of, as people wait for their processing, which can be timely, that we can integrate these individuals into the workplace. And that's something that IRCC is very dedicated to doing.
Do you have any numbers, dollar-wise, how much government has budgeted and allocated for the months and years ahead towards the irregular migration that you talked about?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of funding overall, and I would say that we work in very close partnership here at IRCC with the CBSA and the IRB in terms of the processing required of kind of managing the asylum workload. So just recently in budget 2022, the government invested $1.3 billion over the next 5 years and $331.2 million ongoing to the supports required for asylum seekers from all three organizations.
What else government of Canada can do to help and assist asylum seekers once they are already in Canada?
Absolutely. Those supports are essential. So it's about access to education, access to healthcare, social services like shelters or legal aid. So really, the government works very closely with provinces and territories because provinces and territories do manage some social supports, some municipalities, not-for-profit organizations as well. And so I think that we work with them, and that from a federal government standpoint specifically, I think what I would point to is the interim health benefits that we offer asylum seekers, as well as the interim supports for housing. And I think, again, this is something we do in close collaboration with the provinces, including the province of Quebec, which has seen a lot of pressures, obviously. And so these are the types of things that we try to do in terms of supporting. And it goes without saying that for children who come with their parents seeking asylum, they do have access to education without any types of permitting involved. So these are some of the examples of the supports. And I would also say that as part of the health supports that are provided, mental health supports are also included in that.
Thank you. And I'm sure you have heard that there are many refugee claimants, their claim was dismissed and they're still in Canada and government can't send them back to their respective countries where they have come from, but they have contributed enormously to Canada. They are here for many, many years. They have learned French, they have learned English, and they're working, they have work permits. What are some of the alternative pathways or streams can IRCC bring to help those that are the failed refugee claimants or the fellows that are seeking asylum here?
Yeah, and it's an excellent question. I think that as you may have seen in the minister's mandate letter, the department is looking to see what we can do for some of these either failed claimants or undocumented workers that remain in this country. And so we are looking at what are some of the pathways, what are some of the possibilities to address undocumented workers, and I think because of the vulnerability that they can represent. And one program that I would also note during the last few years is the Guardian Angels program, which was a temporary public policy put in place during the pandemic to provide a permanent residence pathway for those who were pending or failed asylum refugee claimants who worked in direct patient care and their family members. So that's an example of how the department is looking at some of these very challenging issues.
And there are many in trucking industry face the same issue as well. And, trucking industry is key to our economy. And I hope you will consider those as well in your mandate.
Point d'ordre, point d'ordre, point d'ordre, point d'ordre. Madame la Présidente.
Point of order.
Point of order. The interpreter says that there's a problem with the sound for my colleague, Mr. Dhaliwal, because I think that has to be dealt with before we can continue.
Okay, well, time is up for Mr. Dhaliwal. Was there translation available for his tenure, or we have to go back?
Start again.
Ça va aller, c'était...
No, it's okay. It was just at the end of his intervention. Thank you very much.
Okay, so maybe Mr. Dhaliwal, if you can quickly take a minute and to go through just the tail end of your round of questioning.
The last question was, what are some of the immigration pathways or streams IRCC can bring to help not necessarily the undocumented worker, but the people who are documented, failed refugee cases, who've been in Canada for many, many years, have learned French, English, and and those are the people that I'm talking to, and hopefully Deputy Minister will address that.
Yes, thank you. I think what I was indicating is that the department, and in Minister Fraser's mandate letter, there is a mandate commitment to look at regularizing some of these people and having programs in place, pathways to put in place in order to address some of these vulnerable people who are either failed asylum claimants or are undocumented. And so one of the programs that I referred to was the Guardian Angels. It was a temporary public policy put in place during the pandemic to provide a permanent residency pathway for those who had failed or pending asylum refugee claims and who were in direct patient care and their family members. And that's just one example. But the department's going to be doing a lot of policy work in terms of how to address some of these challenges. And Chair, I think it was also noticed for us to take a look at the trucking industry and perhaps the vulnerability of some of those workers. So we will definitely take that back.
Thank you. Thank you. Time is up for Mr. Dhaliwal. We will now proceed to Mr. Brunel Desaep. Mr. Brunel Desaep, you can please begin. You will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you to the witnesses for being with us today. It's a very important study. I'm going to have a number of questions for you, and I'm going to ask Ms. Fox. I'd like to know the latest statistics on refusal of refugees coming through Roxham Road.
Excuse-moi, j'ai juste les pourcentages.
Ça me va les pourcentages.
Alors,
Just the percentage. The percentage in general, that's what I have. Those who went through Roxham who were rejected. I'm going to check. I don't have that with me. Well, once you have it, can you send it to us? And I'd also like to know the rate of the number of requests for asylum in various cities across Canada, including Quebec. Are you trying to answer them up now? I can give you the rate and also their presence in other cities in the biggest cities in Canada, including, of course, in Quebec as well. If you have, do you have that information? I get this information from time to time. I think it's about 80–90%. And what is the current delay for treating asylum claims? How much time before coming to a decision? It's quite late because it's quite long because of the it could be up to about 18 months. But I'm talking about not work permits. I'm talking about the request for asylum, because I've heard of people that have been waiting that for 4 years. Oh, yes, of course, yes. Sorry, yes, I thought you were talking about work permits. So, yes, it can be years. It also depends on how complex their cases, but there must be an average. You must have some kind of an average that you've calculated. I'm going to check. I'm going to ask my team if they have that information. For the Immigration and Refugee Board, about 26 months. 26 months on average, but we have people for whom it's a lot longer. Yes, thank you. And you said that it's 18 months for work permits. Yes, but we've done a survey, and the work permits were only given once the referral was made to the IRB. And I think that is where the 18 months came in. We anticipated the decision. Once we went through all the files, from now on, we should be able to provide the work permit and get it down from about 18 months even to 1 month. But that we don't have any proof that that's going to work. The policy has been is only from 16th of November. Yes, so we don't have any figures for this new policy yet. No. And for 26 months, could you check if it's really 26 months, but for a request for asylum for those going across Roxham, could you tell the committee how the request for asylum from the U.S., what happened with those before before 2004? I'll have to check. I think we should be able to get this information provided to you. I can't believe that nobody in your ministry doesn't know what was happening before, how long it took for an asylum request coming out of the United States. I think you should have that information available to you. I'm sorry. Nobody knows how the asylum request from the U.S., what was happening before 2004? Is that what you're telling me? Well, it's really that in the past it was the IRB, not IRCC, that looked after these files. But we can get back to you. I would certainly hope that you would be aware of these figures, because if you're trying to modernize the system, and if you don't know how things were happening in the past, I don't know how you can improve things, because what I wanted to know were things going well in 2004 for asylum requests from the United States. It's a good point, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can, because the context in the world has greatly changed. So what happened at that time wouldn't necessarily have that much of an effect on now. But yes, you should know how things were working, how well they were working, and you're telling me that your team doesn't really know. To me, it's quite a problem if you're talking about modernizing the system, but you don't know how things worked in the past. And can you do it or not? I think that we're going to continue to discuss the situation. There have been problems, including the increased number of requests. And so when we say that we're going to continue discussions, thank you.
Time is up. We will now proceed to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you will have 6 minutes. You can please begin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for coming to our committee, to the officials. Could the officials advise what is the first document that asylum claimants receive when they first arrive in Canada?
Hi. Well, I recently went to Roxham Road, and I think I can say that when the first person comes through, the first point of contact is the RCMP. And
Sorry, if I could just get the answer to the question on what is the document that IRCC issues to them when they first arrive?
Oh, the document itself. Okay. Well, I think there's a number of documents, and IRCC would be the third person that would sort of issue, right? Because they would see essentially the RCMP and then CBSA.
Okay. Do not provide what is the document that IRCC provides? Could I get that answer, please?
Yeah, it's the acknowledgement of claim. That is the name of the document that they receive from IRCC.
Okay, and is this the new practice in issuing the acknowledgement of claim?
A new practice?
Yeah. No. Okay, when does the asylum seeker get their brown paper, what is known as the brown paper, the refugee protection claimant document?
Usually it's when they go to their follow-up appointment at the IRCC office, and that's usually about 2 weeks later.
Is that the current time period to which people will get that 2 weeks later?
Yes, that's from what I had seen when I did the visit, it was about a 2 week, and I can, maybe it's a little bit less, a bit more depending, but it's approximately 2 weeks.
One of the witnesses who will appear before the committee has sent in a document to indicate that, in fact, is taking much longer than that. For them to get what's known as the brown paper, the process has now added an additional 12 to 24 months before they could get it. And if they can't get that document, that means that the claimant cannot access the interim health program. For example, they can't get their identification to try and seek employment.
Okay.
Is that the reality right now where people are waiting that long to get that brown paper document?
I think it would depend on, and apologies for the complexities, but I think it would depend on if the CBSA referred or whether or not we receive. So I think that depending on how the applicant who has processed them, there could be a change. And that's why we've been trying to really coordinate with the CBSA and the RCMP. I can't, I've written down the 12 to 24 months based on what the testimony has said, and I'll go back and check. But our understanding was that for IRCC processes, it was shorter than that.
So from what I understand is that now it used to take 3 to 6 weeks for people to get an appointment to get their brown paper document. It's now taking 16 to 18 months to get that appointment. And then on top of that, in addition to the acknowledgement of receipt document, they are now being issued a entry for further examination document. And that is because CBSA is unable to process their claim in a timely fashion. So in total, people are now faced with a 12 to 24 month delay before they can get that document. And so in the meantime, what they have to do is to apply for income assistance through to the province to just survive. And you can imagine the hardship that's related to that. So my question is, why can't why can't the government issue that brown paper document on arrival? And so that people can actually get on with making their legal process, and then of course being able to survive and access the necessary services.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think that just in terms of access to services, I think there are access to services right away upon arrival, including housing services and supports. And so there's not a delay, but I will definitely go back and see what can be done in terms of accelerating the brown paper, seeing what the delays are and what flexibilities that we have.
Yes, and if committee can get the information on what is the actual delay, not just from your visit, but in actuality in terms of the practice, because on the ground, if a refugee center who's dealing with claimants day in and day out regularly are seeing this significant shift in timeline and is causing huge problems for people. So it'd be good to get the data on what is that delay and the process for each steps and how long is it taking. And so that we can get a clear picture of what's going on and what work can be done to expedite this. The other question is, in your negotiations with the United States on modernizing, the government likes to use the term modernizing the Safe Third Country Agreement, Canada used to provide an exemption for sending people back to the country of origin that is deemed to be unsafe. We used to have that exemption. That exemption was taken away by the Harper administration in 2009. Is there any discussion in reinstating that exemption?
I think that, you know, in light of the negotiations being sort of bilateral negotiations, I don't want to get into what could be or not be put on the table. I think what I can say is that we're looking at all elements to improve the STCA, but I wouldn't want to get into specifics just in light of the bilateral conversations that are taking place.
Well, more specifically, what's happening right now is that Canada are turning away and sending people back who face gender-based claims, for example, or other vulnerable classes of people. They're being turned back because that exemption's been taken away. And so you can imagine people who face gender-based violence are being sent back to their country of origin to face gender-based violence because the United States does not recognize it, and Canada will not provide an exemption to it. So these are huge problems. And so the NDP takes the view that the Safe Third Country agreements should be, in the very minimum, suspended, if not eliminated. The government should be taking that action.
Ms. Kwan, your time is up. Thank you. We will now proceed to Mr. Lloyd. Mr. Lloyd, you will have 5 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Is deterring asylum claimants who cross at an irregular crossing like Roxham Road a priority of your department and this government?
I think that we want to have, the message is always that we would like to have people claim asylum at ports of entry in this country. That is our message, absolutely.
So you would agree that deterrence is one of your priorities?
I would say that absolutely we look to ensure that people take safe passages to claim asylum in this country, yes.
Does your department have any programs to deter people from undertaking this dangerous journey in the first place?
I think there's information sharing about kind of safe ways to seek haven in this country, and I think that we continuously demonstrate a record in this country of accepting asylum claimants, and I think that we share information around a safe way to do that.
But are you spending any money to share this information with people coming from countries that we've identified are the source of irregular claimants? Is there any money being put into sharing that information so that people will choose not to come in the first place?
I think that there's always capacity building that we do in terms of sharing information about the proper channels to which we follow. So
how much money?
In terms of investment, it's part of kind of our international protection systems, our information flows that could have some of this, but would have other types of...
How much is the government spending to educate people to try to deter them from coming to this country irregularly?
I don't have that dollar figure. I think
is it anything? Is it $0?
Packages.
Is it $0?
There is some work done in terms of information and capacity building in other countries. Absolutely, it's not $0.
Okay, so it's not $0. Okay, how much of the $1.3 billion in new funding that's been announced is dedicating to reducing the Immigration Refugee Board wait times that you admit take over 2 years?
I'd have to get the exact breakdown of how much the IRB is getting. I'm sure that they can.
Can you please provide this committee with that information?
Yes, I can.
Do you agree that if we were to cut down this 2-year plus claims process to a process that took a matter of weeks or possibly months at most, that this would prove to be an effective deterrent to bogus claimants who come to this country?
Well, I think that it's hard to answer that question. I think what I would say is that we want to have an asylum system that is efficient and nimble and flexible and responsive to the demands that we get. And I think that right now we don't have that. So we have to work with our CBSA and IRB colleagues to improve the system and the processing.
So what efforts?
Don't have these
what
delays.
efforts are being undertaken to reduce those wait times right now?
Well, I think I would say a good example of it is given given the fact that it was 18 months to get a work permit, the department's just put in place a public policy to reduce that time to 1 month.
That's for the work permit, I understand. But for hearing the asylum claims, what is being done to reduce the 2-year-plus wait time for hearing these asylum claims?
I think that would be better placed with the IRB. I can't speak to what their efforts are specifically on.
Do you know if any money is? Do you know if any money is being put forward to reduce these wait times?
Absolutely.
Can you please provide this committee with information on additional resources that are being put in towards reducing asylum claim wait times, as well as a number of how many full-time equivalents have been hired to reduce this backlog?
Absolutely, and I can say budget 2022, 1.3 billion. Fall economic statement of 2020, 780 million. Budget 2019, 769.
But you don't know how much of those big numbers are actually being spent on these specific measures that I've asked, though, correct?
Well, you mean on the processing specifically, the breakdown of the processing specifically? I don't have it here, but we do have them, yes.
I guess in my final time, my other question is I see in the estimates here that about 87 million.
I can't hear.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
That 87 million was spent on providing temporary accommodations to unvaccinated, asymptomatic travelers during the time when quarantine hotels were the policy of this country. Was there ever any efforts made to ask those people who are participating in these quarantine hotels if they could pay for the hotels themselves?
I think that just given the public health risk, there was a decision made for the government to pay for the hotels, and just given the levels that we're seeing now, the government has agreed to continue to pay.
So for a regular crosser...
Sorry for interrupting, Mr. Lloyd. Your time is up. Before we go to our next member, just want to clarify, let everyone know that when you ask a question, please allow the other person to respond. If you speak over, then it becomes very difficult for the interpreters to interpret that. So please allow the person to respond to your question and then speak. So just a request to all the members. Now we will proceed to Ms. Sachs. Ms. Sachs, you will have 5 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, Madam Chair, to the officials. I actually had the opportunity to explore Roxham Road recently in Ethics Committee, and Roxham Road itself is actually a number of kilometers away from the Saint-Bernard-la-Colle border crossing. And knowing that the volumes have dramatically increased in 2022, even to even higher than pre-pandemic numbers, do you believe that closing Roxham Road would be a responsible solution to the thousands of asylum seekers, including children who are seeking safety in Canada, who, despite knowing the dangers, when they cross at Roxham Road, they're out in the cold on a road, maybe about 4 or 5 houses around them. Knowing the dangers that they'd be going through this avenue, they still take it, knowing that they are a distance from the Saint-Bernard-la-Colle border. Do you think that we should be closing it?
I think that we have to have a system that works for the most vulnerable. And I think that when we look at the asylum claimants and and you're absolutely right, people are taking great risks to cross either at Roxham or at other border crossings. So I think that Canada has to think about how do we organize ourselves to protect the most vulnerable. And our view is that the points of entry are the safest way in which a person can make an asylum claim in this country. And as such, we need to kind of build a system that can respond to that. We are not closing Roxham Road right now. We need to efficiently deal with what we're seeing right now, which is the reality on the ground of, every day up to 100 or more are crossing, and therefore we have the systems in place. We're working with our partners at the RCMP and the CBSA. And you're absolutely right that these are very desperate people coming through. And so we try to provide those supports, and that's what we'll continue to do.
Great, thank you. And just so launching off on that, we know that asylum seekers are fleeing governments who persecute them, and they also face tremendous dangers in crossing the borders into Canada. I think everyone in this room can recall the story of the family that died at the Manitoba border in the freezing cold, not even within the last 2 years. I've heard stories even at the Roxham Road crossing of women giving birth nearly at the border. So the dangers are real. And what measures do you think we need to take to make life easier for them when they enter Canada, so vulnerable, without having to risk their lives in this manner?
Absolutely. And I think that what I would say is we need to continue to offer supports in terms of that access to education, access to healthcare, access to shelter and housing. And we recognize that there's a lot of pressures on housing just more broadly. However, that's why the government has continued to provide the interim housing program, because it's such an essential part of protecting people. I think that access to education and study permits for those who need it, access to work permits, these are all ways that the government can continue to provide those supports to the asylum seekers, and not only for a short duration of time, but if we can provide open work permits, that allows them to contribute, and that allows them to perhaps start thinking about the supports differently. In terms of what they can do for themselves and their family. So I would say that everything that we put in place with respect to education and work permits helps to build the stability that they so very much need in order to continue to do what they need to do for themselves and their families.
Okay, and thank you for that. And I just want to talk about, some of my colleagues were talking about the volumes, and let's just keep it in perspective here. When I look at the numbers, just for Quebec alone, if you look at 2022, which isn't only January, September, comparatively to even 2019 pre-pandemic. So 2022 was tracking at almost 27,000 coming through Quebec, as opposed to in 2019, 16,000. So, almost 11,000 person increase in relatively a short period of time. And particularly at Roxham Road, I've heard numbers as high as 400 a day, 500 a day coming through that border at height peak times, less at other times, obviously. But with the number of asylum seekers crossing at Roxham Road and increasing over the years, how can we improve the immigration system resources to ensure that they're efficient, the asylum seekers are efficiently resettled and integrated into the country and contribute to our communities? You've alluded to some of those measures with visas and so on, but even at the border itself, there's been some measures that have been put into place.
Well, I think the investments that we've received in order to increase the efficiency for processing, which I recognize we're not there yet, and we need a lot of work to get there. But if we can have an efficient system that can actually deal with people upon arrival, for them to be in a position to be assessed by the IRB in a short time frame, to then once they either become a protected persons, or they can move to kind of maybe sometimes permanent residency and eventually citizenship. And that's the stability that we hope that these people will go through as part of their journey. But I think that in order to do
sorry
that...
Sorry for interrupting, Ms. Fox.
Okay.
Time is up for Ms. Sachs.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Sachs. We will now proceed to Mr. Brunel Desep for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to underscore that I haven't had a response with regard to the rate of asylum requests through Roxham, and I hope that the official will be able to provide that information later. You also spoke about a policy that would drop work permits from 18 to 1 month. And what are you anticipating an increase in the number of people that are going to want to cross the border irregularly? No, I think this is really to help those who are coming in the future, but also those already in the system. But you're not expecting any increase over the next few months. So at this time, we're working as if we're looking at the volumes every day, and then we're expecting that, as I said in my projections, we're expecting fairly high figures this year. Thank you. And you talked a lot about negotiations to modernize the third safe country agreement. How many meetings have you had the ministry since 2019? I arrived in July, and do we have the people that can answer this question? I must say that the last meeting was in September, but the people that are with you today, have they not been here since July? And how many meetings have there been on modernization of the third country agreement since 2019? I can bring back to the committee a list of the meetings that have been held, but You have to understand that these are bilateral negotiations between Canada and the United States, and there are some information. There's some information I can't share with you. And with regard to how many irregular entries do you expect for both regular and irregular? Between 80 and 90,000 are our projections, but I'm just talking about irregular. I can tell you that irregular about 27,000, and right now we're at 55,000, 60,000 for regular. And that's the regular entries for 2022? No, that's just the amount up until September, regular and irregular. No, I'm going to be clear. I'm just talking about irregular. You said there was 27,000. What do you expect to see for the entire year? I imagine you have projections. What are your projections for 2022 as a whole for irregular entries? About 50. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We will now go to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you will have 2.5 minutes. You can please begin.
Could the official tell us what is the processing time right now for asylum seekers who's crossing over irregularly into Canada?
I'll turn to Michelle Kingsley for this one.
Thank you, Chair. So I think it depends at what exact process that you want to know about. The deputy has spoken about the fact that.
Sorry, could I get the entire process? How long is it taking for someone to go through the IRB process and for it to be completed? What's the average processing time?
So I believe the deputy indicated earlier that on average right now it's taking 26 months. That would really be a question to pose to the IRB.
Could the officials provide us with all the data on the information around the processing timeline? Could we also get the information on the top countries of origin in terms of asylum seekers whose claim has been denied and rejected?
Yes, we can definitely provide that.
Okay. And could you also further break down the information on rejections on the basis that are gender-based claims?
Gender-based? Yes. Okay.
Yes. And how many of the, and then along with that, how many of the people are being returned or rejected with an application to countries where the countries are in turmoil or unsafe? And if we could list what those countries might be.
Yes, we can do that. And I would also say that just before there's any type of decision made, there is a pre-removal risk assessment that the department conducts.
Yes, I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that. And when the government engages in these bilateral discussions, has at any point in time the government raised the issue of suspending the Safe Third Country Agreement?
I think it would not be appropriate for me to comment on the conversations that are happening around the SCCA in a bilateral negotiations context.
Okay, well, maybe I'll ask the minister, because the government uses this term of modernizing. Modernizing actually, I think, is euphemistic. And what we've seen is the Liberal government has actually extended the application of Safe Third Country Agreement to 5 I countries. So to that end, on the 5 I countries, how many people have been trying to make a claim to Canada through that process?
For the 5 Eyes countries, how many of them have claimed asylum in this country?
Yeah, try to and then been rejected because of the Safe Third Country Agreement.
Okay, I will check. I'm not sure.
Thank you. Ms. Kwan, your time is up. We will now proceed to CPC for 2.5 minutes and then Liberals for 2.5 minutes. So who will be taking the round from the Conservative side?
I will, Chair.
Okay, Ms. Rempel-Gardner, you will have 2.5 minutes. You can please begin.
Thank you. As part of the government's posture in arguing the Supreme Court case that's currently pending regarding the Safe Third Country Agreement, It's my understanding that the government has asked the court if there is an overturning of the agreement for a year grace period to provide an alternative. Has the department provided advice to the government to date on what that alternative could entail?
So we have been definitely preparing for all scenarios of a decision, and therefore we are kind of looking at what the impacts of the decision would be, the time frame in terms of phasing out a new system, and then of course we're always looking at the various options around what would be.
Thank you. Can you please provide what you can to committee with regard to that advice?
Yeah, I think we have to be mindful of what the public service advice is to ministers. And
thank you for that undertaking. I'm also wondering if you could provide or speak now to the committee about the total number of persons who have made inland asylum claims after regularly entering Canada since November 2015 that have been removed from Canada after having had their claims denied, and if you could break that down by category of inadmissibility and country of origin.
So I don't think I'm able to do that on the spot, but I can definitely take that back.
Yes, I can imagine. We just, if we could get that data prior to the committee ending, that would be great. And I do appreciate some of the confidentiality of advice, but on the first instance that we talked about, if general principles, particularly if the government anticipates having to change posture on the United States being a safe third country for the return of refugees per the definition of international law, that's something that we would be interested in. And if you could comment on that right now, that would be great as well.
I think I would say that our position in court has been clear that we do consider the U.S. a safe third country.
If the Supreme Court rules against this posture, perhaps could you speak to some of the potential implications for processing, and if you have done any extrapolation on the potential increase in demand on Canada's asylum system?
Sorry for interrupting, Ms. Rampel-Gardner. Your time is up. You will get an opportunity in the second round. We will now proceed to Mr. Al-Khoury. Mr. Al-Khoury, you will have 2.5 minutes, and then we will end this panel.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the witnesses being here with us. My question is for Ms. Fox. Ms. Fox, at the last meeting, we heard that the number of individuals accepted on arrival was quite high. Can you confirm that? And can you give us any information on any nuances that people may not be aware of? I'm not sure I understand your question. The individual spoke positively about the fact that the number of people accepted on arrival was quite high. Can you confirm that opinion from the witness, and to provide any nuances in that regard that individuals may not be aware of? I think that it's true that indeed we have a system here in Canada that prioritizes protection of refugees. We have a very humane system, and I think that at the department we cooperate with the border services and the provinces, territories, with the RCMP to ensure that asylum requests are dealt with in a system that stresses the importance of access to work, housing, health services. So I think that we must work on increasing the treatment time, review time for requests. And I think that we must continue to improve coordination with provinces, territories, and other ministries to protect fragile persons. and vulnerable persons, and we have to give a priority to these efforts. And there were also witnesses who recently mentioned that conditions on arrival were quite adequate and reasonable, despite their irregular crossing of the border. Can you give us any information to explain how Canada ensures that asylum requesters are always well treated?
Mr. Alghouri, your time is up, and with that, we will end our panel. I will suspend the meeting for 2-3 minutes so that we can do a sound check for the minister. I see he's logged in, so I will suspend the meeting. Minister, welcome. The clerk would do a sound check, and then we will resume the meeting back. So the meeting is suspended. Thank you. the committee. Thank you, Minister, for appearing before the committee. We have with us in this panel Honorable Sean Fraser, Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Minister, you will have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, and then we will go into a round of questioning. You can please begin.
Excellent, merci. Bonjour à tous.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Today I'm joining you from my home province of Nova Scotia, which rests on the traditional and unceded territories of the Mi'kmaq people. This territory is covered by the Peace and Friendship Treaties. To turn to the issue of the day, persecution, conflict, violence, and human rights violations happening all across the world are forcibly displacing people in record numbers. This is resulting in unprecedented rates of global migration. Like many other countries, Canada has seen an increase in the number of people coming to our country and claiming asylum in search of a safer future for themselves and for their loved ones. When someone seeking this safety arrives to Canada, we have a duty to uphold our international and domestic legal obligations and to provide protection for those fleeing persecution. Premièrement, il est important de garder en tête.
First of all, we have to remember that Canada's asylum system is part of the system of integration of refugees. This is for people arriving in Canada to request a refugee status is not available to persons who are not yet in Canada.
Of claim letters provided to the individual, which helps them with securing access to certain services in Canada. At this stage, eligible claims are referred to the Immigration and Refugee Board, where objective and independent decision makers review the claim. Individuals can expect a fair assessment on the merits of their claim and whether they require protection. If there's a positive decision on their asylum claim, they're able to receive protected person status, which renders them eligible to apply for permanent residency in Canada.
If they receive a negative decision on their asylum claim, they will be issued a removal order and they were released on conditions to report for a future removal proceeding.
And the Canada Border Services Agency share a role in the system as well, and these departments work together to ensure that cases flow through as quickly and as efficiently as possible. In addition to this collaboration, the government's investing new resources in the asylum system to increase capacity and timely processing. I want to highlight something that's not always obvious at first. The fact is, nobody chooses to be displaced. In this role, and even before, I've had the opportunity to meet with many displaced people. No one who has a great life at home just wakes up one day and decides to risk everything to cross the border in search of a safer future. You don't uproot your life and all that you know, your family, your cultural and language connections, your professional skills, and really the sense of who you are to live in limbo with an uncertain future. The people that I've met decide to do this because they have no other choice in order to survive or to ensure their family's well-being. Tout comme nous travaillons avec ASF.
Just as we work with our national partners, we work with the American government to ensure the refugee system. There is a third-party agreement between the United States and Canada, and we believe it is also important to collaborate with the United States to ensure that we regulate our shared border.
Refugee claimants are required to request refugee protection in the first safe country they arrive in. This is the case unless they qualify for an exception to the agreement. Exceptions to the agreement consider the importance of family unity, the best interest of children, and the public interest. My provincial counterparts have expressed an empathy for the issues facing asylum seekers and want to be able to do their part to help accommodate them as well. That said, supporting asylum seekers is a shared responsibility, and the federal government assists provinces in the delivery of services to asylum seekers. One such way is by providing provincial and municipal partners with support for temporary housing. Since 2017, support has primarily been through the Interim Housing Assistance Program. This program provides compensation to provinces and municipalities for the extraordinary costs of interim housing for asylum seekers on a cost-sharing basis. The Government of Canada is going to continue to support provincial and municipal partners to help develop shared solutions. Madam Chair, I know you said I'd had 5 minutes. I prepared somewhat longer remarks. I expect I'm close to the end of my time, so perhaps I'll leave it there and deal with the remainder during time we've set aside for questions. I do want to say thank you so much to members of the committee. Merci de votre invitation aujourd'hui.
Thank you for inviting me.
I have 45 seconds and a few pages of notes.
Okay.
I'll cut my comments off there, say thank you to my colleagues, and that I'm very much looking forward to the opportunity to take what questions you may have, and of course to follow up with each and all of you on the floor of the House of Commons or in the hallways of Parliament. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Minister. And with that, we will now go to our round of questioning. We will start our round of questioning with Ms. Rempel Gardner. Ms. Rempel Gardner, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister. Particularly given that the United States-Canada Safe Third Country Agreement allows for numerous exceptions, does the federal government affirm that this agreement is constitutional within a Canadian legal context?
It's our view that the agreement is constitutional, as was upheld by the recent Federal Court of Appeal decision. Of course, matters are still before the courts, and we'll respect whatever decision they have, but it's our view, of course, that the agreement is constitutional.
Does the federal government affirm that Canada's obligation to provide effective protection and to ensure effective protection is provided by a country to which Canada transfers refugees is being met via current legislative priorities and other related protocols currently in place within the United States of America?
You're asking effectively, do they meet the standard to be a safe country under the agreement?
Correct.
It's my view that they do. There's a number of factors that we look at, whether they're parties to certain treaties, their policies and practices, and whether they have a functioning asylum system that allows people to have their claim fairly adjudicated. It's my assessment that they meet that standard, and we're obliged under the agreement to monitor that on an ongoing basis, and we believe that they have met that standard.
That's right. And Minister, are you aware of President Joe Biden's executive order? I believe it was about a year and a half ago that's essentially said that the United States was going to take more efforts to look at gender-based violence, gang violence, in terms of their refugee determination system. Do you believe that this executive order shows further evidence that the United States is meeting its obligation in terms of being deemed a safe country per international law?
I am aware of it. I believe it's one factor. It's not determinative one way or the other. We look at whether people are a party to the Convention Against Torture, the Refugee Convention, policies and practices such as you've just identified, their human rights record, and whether they agree to share responsibility for refugee protection. That's one of many factors to consider, but it would move the needle towards satisfying the standard that we would require. But there are many other factors we also continuously monitor.
And so just to be clear, based on everything you just said, the federal government affirms that the United States currently meets the basic standards of refugee protection as set out in international law.
That's correct, but more specifically as set out in the Safe Third Country Agreement.
Thank you. Does the government affirm international law which states that asylum seekers should make their claim for asylum in the first safe country that they reach?
Let me just put a finer point. Indulge me for 30 seconds. I promise not to take too much time. Having a background in international law, the only thing I can tell you I'm certain about is that you'll find people who disagree on different points. If you include the terms of the Safe Third Country Agreement, certainly that's an element of that legal obligation. However, I think in addition to it having some basis in the agreement, it's advisable because we don't want to encourage people to take on often dangerous or perilous journeys. It's a principle that I've seen the UNHCR support in the past. There is some debate about whether it's firmly embedded in different international legal instruments. I think it's advisable to adhere by that principle, and it is adopted as a principle in the Safe Third Country Agreement as well.
Thank you. So given that, does the government affirm that asylum seekers who first reach the United States of America should make a claim in that country as opposed to seeking to irregularly enter Canada to make an inland asylum claim?
There are always unique exceptions even under the Safe Third Country Agreement, and we always do a case-by-case assessment. We try not to have blanketed decision-making in an omnibus way, but the principles underlying the Safe Third Country Agreement promote the outcome you've just described, which is to say if you're safe in the country where you first arrive, we would prefer to have you make the asylum claim in that country, including for people who first arrive in Canada.
Does the government affirm that economic migrants should apply for residency within Canada via regular migration streams as opposed to seeking to make an inland asylum claim?
Yes, it's our view that people who seek to come here for economic reasons should use the economic streams. And in fact, Canada is engaged as the chair of the support platform for an organization called MERPS to promote regular migration pathways in Central and South America. We believe it is advisable to have organized regular migration pathways, including for economic migrants, for those who are seeking to migrate for economic purposes.
And do you affirm that reducing the amount of time that passes between an inland asylum claim being made and when the claim is processed could deter persons from seeking to make an inland asylum claim after having reached the United States?
You know, I would have been more inclined to give you a quick yes a year and a half ago before I was in this job. Honestly, Ms. Rempel-Garner, I've met now a significant number of refugees and asylum seekers. I haven't met a person who told me their motivation was processing times. It's been fleeing challenging circumstances in every instance. So I have a hard time. Conceptually, I can see why the argument suggests it could. Anecdotally, I'm not to meet a person who's indicated that was a motivating factor.
So non-Canadians who are low-skilled workers have relatively few avenues to access permanent residency in Canada. Do you think this reality, when compared to expedited work permit processing for persons who make inland asylum claims after having reached the United States, strains the asylum system, potentially, while sending a message of unfairness to economic migrants seeking to come to Canada via regular means, and ergo, the government should be looking at more pathways for regular migration for economic migrants?
So I agree with you for part of your question, but I may take a different slant on another element. I agree that we need to continue to increase pathways for regular economic migration, including at different skill levels. You would have seen in the recent Immigration Levels Plan a significant increase in our ambition and a decision to try to tailor our economic programs to meet different key gaps in the labor force. I wouldn't necessarily say that we've created an incentive for people to make asylum claims for reasons that are inappropriate, but I do think we need to continue to do more to make it easier for people who are seeking to migrate for genuine economic reasons through regular migration pathways.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Time is up for Mr. Rempel-Garner. Thank you. We will now proceed to MPLE. MPLE, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, thank you for appearing today. Through you, Madam Chair, to the Minister. Could you please tell us what additional steps we can take as a country to show compassion to those asylum seekers and move them from their temporary status to permanent residence?
Look, it's a great question. A lot of people who are here in Canada, not just asylum seekers, by the way, who are living on a temporary status, would like to become permanent residents. And having certainty in what those pathways look like is really important. In order to do that, we need to continue to increase our immigration ambition, which is, I believe, is a good thing for both economic and demographic reasons, but it can also be for compassionate reasons. Smoothing the pathway after a person receives protected person status to permanent residency is one thing that we would be able to do to make life easier, particularly because people who achieve protected person status do not automatically become entitled to be reunified with their families. Making sure that we're investing in the asylum system so people have timely decision making so they are not left wondering what their status would be another example, and continuing to work with different levels of government at the provincial or municipal level to make sure that when a person is here going through the process, they're not without a place to go to sleep with a roof over their head and have their basic needs such as healthcare taken care of. There's a number of elements we can do to make sure that our system of migration and asylum is more compassionate. And of course, I don't have a monopoly on good ideas. And if the committee arrives on additional recommendations, I would be more than happy to consider them in good faith.
Thank you, Minister. My next question. I understand that many asylum seekers who have entered by Roxham Road become productive workers, but they have to wait some time to obtain work permits. Given that Canadian businesses need workers, and given the aging Canadian demographic, what can be done to facilitate entry into the workforce of these individuals?
So thank you for the question. I don't want to use Canada's asylum system as our economic growth strategy. I want to use our economic migration system as our economic growth strategy and to continue to clear pathways for people to come through regular migration pathways to help fill key gaps in the labor force. That said, there is a reality that we're living with, that there are people who are crossing the border and making asylum claims, and we have to deal with those challenging circumstances in a responsible and compassionate way. I don't view it to be appropriate to deny a person the ability to work when they have no other means to support themselves as they're hearing a claim as to whether they are so vulnerable that they're in need of Canada's protection. We've recently had a shift in policy to make sure that people are able to obtain work permits before their eligibility decision to apply for asylum is rendered, which will shorten the period of time that people will go without the ability to work and support themselves. So we need to do that to remain compassionate towards people who are fleeing vulnerable circumstances, but not necessarily as a strategy to pursue economic growth, because we know that our regular migration pathways for economic migrants are a more effective way to pursue economic growth. So we may do the same thing you've recommended for compassionate reasons, but not necessarily for the same motivation as we have other pathways to achieve those economic ends.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you for your compassion towards the asylum seekers. You have mentioned in your statement as well, and I truly appreciate. My next question, given that we have the world's longest non-militarized border with the U.S., closing Roxham Road...
Point d'ordre, Madame la Présidente, point d'ordre.
Point of order. Chair, I'm being told that the sound is poor quality for my colleague, Mr. Lee.
Hello, Madam Clerk, can you
Mr.
hear
Ali,
me?
can you please say a few words? Let the clerk check.
Madam Clerk, can you hear me clearly? How's the weather down there?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Is it okay? Yeah, thank you.
Attendez, moi...
Sorry, is that okay for the interpreters?
Okay. Okay. Oh.
So, no, please. I was... if he could speak a little bit more slowly, this would be better. That would facilitate the work of the interpreters. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ali, if you can go a bit slower. So.
Okay, Minister, given that we have the world's longest non-militarized border with the U.S., closing Roxham Road or suspending the Safe Third Country Agreement would not be a solution. It would just cause asylum seekers to make more dangerous crossing and put them at a greater risk of exploitation. You have suggested modernizing the agreement to make it more sustainable. Could you share with us what modernizing the agreement might look like?
Look, thank you to my colleague for the question. And I think you've made a key point. A simple suspension of the Safe Third Country Agreement, in my view, would lead to a potentially significant number of people making claims in a different and perhaps less organized way that would exacerbate some of the challenges that are very real of dealing with large numbers of people who seek to come across our borders. Despite the scale of our challenges, I should point out as well, we sometimes forget that we're blessed by geography compared to many countries in the world, surrounded by 3 oceans and the United States to our southern border, which limits the number of people who seek to come in irregularly compared to other countries. That said, because we want to maintain this unmilitarized border with our largest and most important geopolitical partner, we need to work together to make sure that the system works more effectively. You'll forgive me if I don't go into the specifics of what a modernized agreement looks like, because of course we're having discussions in real time with the United States, and it would betray the confidence that they have shared with us as a result of these conversations being in an ongoing way. So I won't share the details of those discussions on an open floor when they were promised in confidence to the United States. However, we're going to seek to make sure we continue to promote regular migration, discourage people from making perilous journeys, and ensure that on both sides of the border, people are treated with compassion and have a fair shot to have their asylum claim heard should they land in one country or the other and choose to make an asylum claim to seek safe haven.
Thank you, Minister. Madam Chair.
Thank you for your time. Mr. Ali, your time is up.
Okay, thanks.
We will now proceed to Mr. Brunel Desep. Mr. Brunel Desep, you will have 6 minutes. You can please begin.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you to the Minister. Mr. Minister, your Deputy Minister earlier in the meeting told us that the predictions for the ministry with regard to irregular entries would be 50,000 irregular entries. And I see the October numbers that have just come out, 31,000 for Roxham Road. How can these projections be reconciled with these different figures? I'm sorry, but I don't think there's that much of a difference. The
number correct on the number of people who are seeking to come across Roxham Road, though the projection is between 84 and 94,000, I believe. For the total number of asylum claims that would be made.
Ouais, non, mais moi je parle. Pardon, Monsieur le
Sorry, Mr. Minister, but I don't have a lot of time. But I was talking about irregular entries and the figures that it seems strange that the projections are what they are when there were just there are 30,000 in just in the recent month, and I think the projections have to be more carefully done because there seemed to be some inconsistency. And earlier we learned that of all the people in the previous panel, no one was able to tell me what the asylum process was before the third country agreement in 2004. Do you think it's normal that your officials cannot or are unaware of the system or how it worked before the third country agreement? How can you explain that they don't know what that system was?
So a couple of points. I want to push back on your assertion we need to have more accurate projections. The vast majority of irregular claimants in Canada have come across Roxham Road. I don't think there's an inconsistency based on our projections and the number of people who've crossed to date. The second question, I don't think it's unusual to have a question sprung upon a department official about what system may have existed 18 years ago without an opportunity to prepare. However, before the Safe Third Country Agreement, I would suggest it doesn't provide a particularly useful reference point as to what solutions may be appropriate going forward. There has been an explosion, not just in across the Canada-US border, but globally in the number of people seeking asylum. We need to be adopting solutions that are going to apply to the challenges that we're facing today, not the challenges that may have been.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre. Vous avez...
Thank you very much, Minister. You've answered the question. So you think it's quite normal that your officials don't know what the situation was before the third country agreement? I think that's absurd. If these people, if they're participating in negotiations to modernize the agreement, but they don't know what the situation was like before the agreement. I think if there are any journalists listening, I think they'll be asking a question about that. And Minister, I'm going to continue talking about your party since 2019, even in your election platform, you said you improve review times for requests, and there's nothing that we see now. Now you say there's not the time to suspend the third country agreement because you say that the regular entry points are less well organized than the Roxham Road regular entry points, and I find it difficult to believe that there's a difference in the readiness of the entry points. And how many meetings have there been to modernize the third country agreement with the United States?
Look, let me just correct the record first. There's been a couple of instances, and I know that you're a thoughtful, intelligent, and fair-minded person, my friend. There's been a few instances where you've put your words in my mouth, and I just want to be careful not to suggest to those journalists in the room they adopt those quotes as being attributable to me. We can carry on in that conversation subsequently. And look, I've in my effort to correct, I've lost track of what your actual question was, Alexei. If you don't mind just coming back to it, I would appreciate it very much.
Earlier you said that if we're talking about third country agreements, and there are some areas that are, or entry points that are less organized for receiving these individuals than at Roxham. But you're talking about the regular entry points, and you're telling me that regular entry ports are less well organized than the irregular point at what the RCP called the Roxham entry point, even though it's an irregular entry point. And if we suspend the third country agreement, you'll be able to go through the regular entry points, and they're less well organized than Roxham?
No, that's not the argument I'm making. And to be fair to you, if the chair would like to add a minute to your questions and I could accommodate by staying an extra minute, that delay was on my part, and I'd be happy to accommodate. So to be very clear, there's not just danger when people are crossing the border in an irregular way. There is danger across the migration journey for somebody who decides they may seek to come into one country or another. The suspension of the Safe Third Country Agreement could cause a large number of people to come across in both irregular and regular fashions in different parts of the country in ways that are not currently prepared to be dealing with large influxes of people coming in to seek asylum claims. But if there are more people migrating throughout the course of their journey as a result of a pull factor that would be created by us saying we're no longer going to have a Safe Third Country Agreement, there would be potentially thousands upon thousands of people choosing to put themselves in danger, not just between the Canada-US border, but at other points of their journey along the way. That's not a danger that I want to promote.
Monsieur le Ministre.
Minister, just a minute. You've just told me that please wait. Please, I'm sorry. He said he would give me another minute. So the professional.
7 minutes. We gave that extra minute. So we will now proceed to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you will have 6 minutes. You can please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Minister for appearing before our committee. He just said in his comments that globally there is a crisis, really, with people who are faced with displacement, forcibly displaced in their country of origin. In Canada, by geography, is such that we are actually quite sheltered from the impact of that. The one exception, of course, would be the U.S. border, and so hence the Safe Third Country Agreement. And so given that the numbers really relative to the rest of the globe in the face of this crisis, Canada is not as impacted by some of the other countries, literally by the millions of people crossing over to seek safety. But yet Canada has chosen to put a Safe Third Country Agreement in place. And even though the minister admitted that people try to seek safety not because it's fun, because they really need to do so. And they enter into this perilous journey to get to safety. The Safe Third Country Agreement puts them into this dangerous situation, subject them to exploitation, subject them to smugglers, subject them to other dangers as they're making this journey, whether it be weather-related or otherwise. So why not do away with the Safe Third Country Agreement so that people are not subjected to that, and then allow for them to actually make their claims through a regular entry?
Sorry, did you say a regular or irregular at the end of your comment, Ms. Kwan?
A regular, for them to make the entry through a regular port of entry, so that they can make their claim through a regular port of entry. Because right now, if they do with the Safe Third Country Agreement, they will be automatically be rejected.
Thank you, and I understand the question. So with enormous respect, I think we probably agree on the outcomes we want to foster, which is safer, regular migration pathways, but disagree a little bit on the impact of suspending the Safe Third Country Agreement. It's my view that a suspension of the Safe Third Country Agreement would create the potential for more and more people to make the decision to not to leave their country. People are choosing to leave their country because they're fleeing vulnerable circumstances, but to continue their journey on until they get to Canada specifically. My view is that we should promote the principle of people choosing to make an asylum claim in the first place where they are safe, to limit the number of people who are further putting themselves at danger by continuing on a potentially perilous journey. I see you've put your hand in to interject.
Yeah, so with the Safe Third Country Agreement, as the minister knows, it predated the Trump administration. One might argue that during that period, it was some of the worst times for people trying to get to safety in the United States. So it predated the Trump administration, and the U.S. Has a mandatory detention policy upon arrival for asylum seekers who were also, that was also in place prior to the Trump administration. The practice of detention for asylum seekers is deeply rooted in the core system of the U.S. immigration refugee system. And we cannot lose sight of the fact that the culture that they have built up with ICE there is not going to go away overnight, even with the Biden administration. So this is the reality right now. And so really for some of these asylum seekers, they are faced with an impossible situation. And there are people who are faced with detention. There are people who are being sent back to the country of origin to face the dangers to which they've been trying to flee from. So given that is the reality, why wouldn't if the government says, if the minister says that he wants to address this issue and he's sympathetic and compassionate, then why would, is it his view that he will never raise the question of suspending, even just suspending, if not doing away with the Safe Third Country Agreement with the United States?
So there's a big difference between not suspending and never raising the potential to suspend. One of the things that we're actually required to do under the Safe Third Country Agreement is to monitor compliance with policies that protect human rights and treat refugees and asylum seekers with fairness and compassion. We do this on an ongoing basis. The factors that we consider as to whether a country could be designated as a safe country for the purpose of a Safe Third Country Agreement include whether they're a party to the Convention Against Torture, the Refugee Convention, their policies and practices, where this ongoing monitoring is particularly important, as well as the human rights record of a country. It's not necessarily the case that because there is one particular policy that may be different than what Canada would like to see happen, that results in the automatic suspension of the agreement. When we look at the sum total of these factors, we make an assessment on a regular basis as to whether the country we're dealing with continues to meet that standard as a safe country. It's our government's view that the United States, given the totality of these factors, continues to meet that standard, which is why we have not made any decision to suspend the Safe Third Country Agreement.
Yeah, the U.S., even in its worst times, you know, we have to remember during the Trump administration, what were they doing? They dramatically expanded the authority to arrest, to jail, and deport migrants in the United States. We can never forget the image of children putting in cages, being separated, being torn away from their parent, you know, with their anti-immigration policy and refugee policies. And they outright reject gender-based claims, outright rejected. That's the reality. Even in those circumstances, the government says, oh, well, but the U.S. is still a safe country. Really? How?
Look, some of the situations you described, when I was confronted with those as a member of parliament long before I held these positions, I took it upon myself with certain colleagues to reach out to representatives from the United States to voice my concern about some of the images that I had been seeing, and actually published a statement through social media at the time to voice some of my concern as someone who cared deeply about the well-being and fair treatment of people. However, we still need to look at the totality of the factors and to determine whether the United States actually still has a functioning asylum system that allows people to make a fair claim. We're not just dealing with the folks who are making asylum claims along the southern border, but people who've traveled to the United States and have the potential to make a claim in the US who may instead choose to come to Canada. We constantly reassess the situation to determine whether they meet the standard of a safe third country. And I would point out as well that even when some of these policies are initially adopted, the U.S. court system still has the ability to make decisions where a given administration may run afoul of a particular rule to actually undo some of those policies that would have caused a particular country
Minister.
to fall out of favor with the Safe Third Country Agreement. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Sorry for interrupting. Time is up for Ms. Kwan. We will now proceed to Mr. Lloyd. Mr. Lloyd, you will have 5 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Oh, point of order, Chair. It's Mr. Paul Hoos for the Conservatives.
Okay. Mr. Paul Hoos will take the next round. So, Mr.
Merci,
Paul,
Madame la
you will have
Présidente.
5.
Thank you very much, Chair. Hello, Minister. And Minister, I'm trying to understand with regard to Roxham Road and at the time when Mr. Trudeau talked about sent his tweet when the situation is becoming a difficult one with the irregular immigration, there are two aspects. You say that your position as a minister and you're clear with regard to your intentions to control. You said that there should be an ordered process for arrivals, and I agree with you. But on the other hand, what happens now is that questions from our Liberal colleagues go in the other way. It's like we're normalizing this way of immigration that's becoming normalized, and we encourage it. And but say, you one hand you shouldn't come into Canada in a regular fashion, but the other side you say, well, okay, that's one way, and maybe we'll give people a permanent residency. In other words, I don't think this seems very common sense for the other parties. Is there a difference between what you're saying and what your Liberal colleagues are saying, and the officials and about how you get into Canada?
There is no logical inconsistency with promoting regular migration pathways and still demonstrating compassion towards some of the world's most vulnerable people who are coming to our country. With respect to your commentary around the Prime Minister issuing a tweet a number of years ago, I would point out that people don't flee their home country because of a welcoming tweet from a country's leader. They flee their country because they are seeking to escape violence, war, and persecution. It's my belief, and I hold this firmly as a minister and as a human.
Mais ça, je comprends ça, Monsieur le Ministre.
Yes, I understand, Minister, but there are hundreds of millions of individuals on the planet living in countries where life is difficult. They're living very difficult situations, and we have room in our system for refugees, and we've already welcomed millions of refugees. In recent years, we've had Syrians, Afghans, others who have been welcomed in Canada. And we have a place for them, and we look after them. But Roxham, it's a problematical immigration system, because if I want to try to go to Canada, I'm going to cross the states, I'm going to go to Roxham Road, and there I'm going to hope that Canada will welcome me. And I think we've got a 50% acceptance rate, and there are others who are rejected. I mean, they're even worse off than before when they arrived. And this is an even greater problem for these people who are trying to improve their chances.
So one of the things that's very important for committee members to understand is that when an individual crosses the border in an irregular way and makes an asylum claim, the merits of their case are considered on a case-by-case basis based on the particular vulnerabilities that they have. If they qualify to make an asylum claim, they will be granted an asylum in Canada in accordance with our domestic and legal obligations, which form part of our migration framework in Canada. If someone comes who does not qualify because, as a previous questioner suggested, they want to simply that does not entitle them to receive asylum.
One person at a time. Can I please ask all the members to let the other person answer the question, so that, because if you speak over, the interpreters will not be able to translate. So for translation purposes, one person should speak at a time. And once member asks the questions, please allow the minister to answer them. Thank you.
Okay. Donc,
if I understand the process, but we're talking about people who are who've arrived early in the year. We have thousands of people who have crossed irregularly, who were rejected, but now who have disappeared. We don't know where they are. They're in Canada. They're somewhere. We don't know what their status. They have no status. And can you say today how many people are being searched for or looked for by the services, immigration services? If you don't know, perhaps Ms. Fox, someone on the team, will be able to answer.
Certainly, I don't have a specific number of people who've made a failed asylum claim and are still within Canada. We don't monitor the number of people who exit Canada voluntarily. Deputy Minister Fox, if you have any specific data, I'd be happy to yield the floor.
Yeah, no, we don't have that specific data, but we can see what CBSA could provide to the committee. So I'll take a loop back with them and go back. But as you said, no exit tracking.
But is there similar information available from Border Services? I'm going to try to find out any information that may be available in that regard. Sorry, I didn't hear your last answer.
Ms. Fox, if you can just repeat the last answer you gave.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I'm not certain what information or the details you want, but I'm going to contact Border Services to find any information that I can. But the question, thank you.
Okay, we will now proceed to Mr. Al-Khouri. Mr. Al-Khouri, you will have 5 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you, Minister, for being very generous in accepting our invitation to come here and answer our questions on how to improve the system and the work of your ministry and to answer our questions. And first of all, I would like to reassure my colleague, Mr. Paulus, that the questions from this side of the table are seeking to get to the truth of the situation. What does that mean? Well, you said that we asked questions in opposite senses, opposite ways. No, we're always trying to ask the right questions, get the right questions. Can you tell us about your way of treating and meeting the needs of persons entering through Roxham, so that the situation in Roxham will be clear for everyone?
Certainly. So when a person enters irregularly through Roxham Road, they're given a document acknowledging that they've made their claim for asylum. They are able to start to seek access to certain services. But let's not pretend that this reality is without challenges. There's very real challenges for our provincial partners in Quebec in this instance, for municipal partners. And that's why we've actually developed programs to cover the cost of healthcare, to contribute to the cost of housing. We've set up facilities through leasing arrangements with temporary accommodations on site, and continue to work with communities at a provincial and municipal level to ensure that the capacity of their shelter system, for example, is not overrun. We need to make sure that we continue to treat people with compassion, to uphold our reputation as a welcoming and compassionate country in the world, but also to make sure that we don't simply have the costs of this very real world challenge simply be downloaded onto provincial and local levels of government. These are not easy challenges to sort through, but it's our responsibility of a government to meet the domestic and international legal obligations that we have, which include to treat people with respect and compassion, and to provide a fair and fast and final resolution of asylum claims that are made when a person comes to Canada and seeks to remain on the basis of persecution they may be fleeing.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Minister. My second question, Minister, even if you were not in your current position at the time, can you give us any information on the $500 million provided to Quebec between 2017 and 2020 in order to reduce pressure on Quebec for meeting the needs of these individuals? Yes, thank you very much, colleague, for this question. And it's very important to understand that the federal government has contributed to improving the quality of life for individuals across the country.
And I'm trying to dig out these specific figures in front of me just to make sure that your number is the same as my number. But what we end up doing is essentially working to understand the capacity that different governments will have. We do this in particular with Quebec as a result of the influx of irregular asylum seekers to make sure that they have the capacity to cover many of the costs associated with housing and that we cover much of the costs associated with healthcare. The kinds of resources that we're talking about between, I think you said 2017 and 2020, I've got in front of me between 2017 and 2022, just with respect to Roxham Road, contributions to the tune of $269 million towards accommodations, security, health, and transportation costs. We're going to continue to manage the challenges associated with large numbers of people until we can reach a permanent solution that will allow us to respect the both Canadian and international legal obligations that we have, and also continue to treat people in a fair and compassionate way. There are difficult problems that come with irregular migration, but we all know that difficult problems is a part of our professional choice when we put our names on the ballot, and to continue to work with others who've done the same at provincial and municipal levels of government to serve the interests of communities is something we'll continue to do.
Monsieur le Ministre.
Minister?
Your time is up. We will now proceed to Mr. Brunel Decep. Mr. Brunel Decep, you will have 2.5 minutes. You can please begin.
Thank you very much. I only have 2.5 minutes, so I'm going to ask short questions and short answers, I hope. Minister, do you think that the agreement is adequate now, or if not, if it is, why are you negotiating?
Perdre ce temps-là, Madame la Présidente, là.
I don't want to lose this time. There was a problem with the.
I think there is some translation issue. I've stopped the clock. Madam Clerk, if you can please check. Mr. Brunel Decep, can you just say a few sentences so that we can check?
1, 2.
1, 2, 3, and we'll go to the woods. 4, 5, 6. Pick cherries in a new basket. I hope they'll all be red.
Sounds good, thank you.
Okay, is it good all? Okay.
C'est bon, on part du...
Okay, so we're starting off at the start of my time. For a question, short question, short answer. The agreement, you want to modernize it. Does that mean it's not adequate now? If not, why were you renegotiating?
I think it needs to be improved and modernized, yes.
Donc, vous nous dites...
So you're saying that you've been negotiating since 2018 now, 4 years then?
Not me personally, but our governments have been working together to identify a path forward for several years.
Donc, vous nous dites...
So you're saying that over these 4 years, we have been working with an inadequate, unsatisfactory agreement relating to asylum requests in Canada?
Look, just to be clear, having an agreement that is imperfect is far better than not having an agreement at all, but we should constantly be searching for ways to better the quality of the agreements that we have with our international partners.
Donc, ça fait...
So 4 years we've been working with an unsatisfactory agreement, and we haven't been able to find any solutions. Great. Have you heard talk about people smugglers who are taking advantage of migrants and asylum requesters? Radio-Canada, for example, a journalist at Radio-Canada who were taking advantage of the people wanting to cross the border, $600 up to $10,000 per person. And are you going to have an inquiry into the role of these people smugglers?
I think we constantly need to monitor the treatment of people who are seeking to come to Canada, but I want to be clear that I would not attribute illegal behavior in the United States to the presence of a safe third country agreement. In some ways, it's possible that the absence of the agreement could exacerbate that kind of illicit behavior.
But are you going to, are there any discussions with the United States about these people smugglers?
It's part of what we do within the context of the Safe Third Country Agreement is to monitor the treatment of people who are coming to seek asylum. This is one of the kinds of things that we can monitor, but certainly not the only thing.
But so there's nothing being done with regard to this crime. It's a crime of human trafficking. This is one of the worst crimes in the world. So there's nothing being done, no measures adopted by the government of Canada that claims they want to welcome these people.
Okay, merci.
That is not my characterization. We're out of time. I'll look forward to question period next week.
Yeah. Okay, we will now proceed to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you will have 2.5 minutes. You can please proceed.
One way to actually address that issue, of course, is to get rid of the Safe Third Country Agreement. But anyway, the minister is not going to do that. Given everything that we know about the Safe Third Country Agreement, will the minister consider broadening public policy exemption under Article 6 to include gender-based claims and for other vulnerable classes of people?
Jen, are you talking about exemptions to the Safe Third Country Agreement?
Yes.
Well, as we seek to modernize it, there's a number of different items we would consider, but I don't want to get into the specifics of what conversations I have had confidentially with the United States. This is the kind of thing that we need to respect happens privately between sovereign nations.
Well, thank you. But I hope that the minister will agree that in the very minimum, he should advance gender-based claims and for other vulnerable classes of people to be exempt. And I won't belabor all the reasons why, and it is an important one. I hope the minister will agree. Currently, there's a prolonged delay for asylum claimants with their processing. I know that the minister wants to try to move this quickly, including the policy on allowing people to get an open work permit. But the reality on the ground is that people are not moving this through quickly. And we've been advised through a submission by a witness that is added, the process is now added another 12 to 24 months before a claimant can even get their identification document, and which is hugely problematic. So my question to the minister is, will he ensure that refugee protection claimant documents and open work permits are issued upon arrival so that people can quickly move forward? And this will also support municipalities and provinces as well, because otherwise, if people can't get these services and get that document, they won't be able to work. And they would have to go on, for example, income assistance and rely heavily on provincial governments and municipal governments for support.
So one point of clarity, I agree with the member that we need to continue to make investments to speed up the process. We've actually put $1.3 billion towards the asylum system in the last federal budget. We recently made a change to expedite the timelines on which a person can receive a work permit by allowing them to make it prior to receiving an eligibility decision. And we also have the ability for individuals to access services upon the document acknowledging their claim, which happens much earlier in the process. It is imperfect. We need to speed things up, but we are taking steps already to try to improve the quality of some of these circumstances you've raised.
Yeah, the two things.
Sorry for interrupting, Ms. Kwan. Your time is up. I've checked, and Minister can stay until 3:07, so we will have 4 minutes for Mr. Redekop and then end the panel with Mr. Dhaliwal for 4 minutes. So, Mr. Redekop, you are up next, and you will have 4 minutes for your round of questioning.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here. I just want to come back to, you talked about the migrants don't come to Canada because of our administrative procedures or because of, the timing of the border and so on. And I understand that. And it's not necessarily that there's illegal activities going on, but we have entrepreneurs that are very, very cagey, and they understand that they can make a dollar here if they can help these migrants come to Canada. So I guess my question is, and we've heard testimony too, that there is a whole industry being built around bringing people to the border through the Roxham Road crossing. So my question to you is, what are you and your government doing to maybe discourage some of these activities and to prevent this whole industry from taking hold and actually, essentially taking advantage of the situation in a completely legal way?
Just to clarify, I think every member of all parties on this committee would condemn human trafficking and people smuggling. It's not something that we want to see by any means. What we try to do is to share good information about the process of making asylum claims in Canada and to work with our international partners, in this case the United States, to let them know when we hear of trends that are happening within their borders that are not within the jurisdiction of the Government of Canada. Of course, we can't send the RCMP into the United States to start busting human trafficking rings that are taking place outside of our own borders. But we need to continue to work with our international partners and to provide good information. But on the issue of the Safe Third Country Agreement, though this is not necessarily your perspective, it's come up in other members' questions, removing the Safe Third Country Agreement could result in an increase in the number of people who are seeking to come to Canada through irregular ways and making an asylum claim when they arrive, and that's something we want to protect against.
Yeah, and I would agree with you on that. But I do want to circle back, though, because ministers before you have actually taken efforts to go to the United States, and you speak about talking to the government, and I get that, but most entrepreneurs aren't looking at government websites to see what government discussions are. They're looking at what's out there in the social media and in different news. So specifically, what efforts are you taking to talk to more grassroots people about discouraging them from doing this and preventing them from making a dollar by supposedly helping people to come to Roxham Road?
So we have different elements of our response, and look, we've got a very limited time, so I'll try to go fast. To combat smuggling, whether it happens by road, by air, or by sea.
Minister, I'm not talking about smuggling. I'm talking about these are not illegitimate businesses, but these are people who are these are entrepreneurs who see an opportunity. They're not smuggling people; they're helping people. But it's also exacerbating the problem, making it worse. And what are you doing to discourage that?
So are you talking about bringing people to the border for the purpose of making an asylum claim?
Yes.
I view that to be a very dangerous and sometimes on the ground in those social circles, it can in fact involve human smuggling. And I think we should be very clear that there's very dangerous behavior that forms part of this. So when we're dealing with behavior and conduct that's taking place in another country's borders, we need to work with the government of those other countries. I don't think it would be the best use of my time to personally infiltrate the social circles of organizations or entrepreneurs and to use your lingo, to try to interrupt that kind of flow of people that are trying to make, in some instances, asylum claims that are potentially not justified. We need to make sure that we have clarity in the rules, that we broadcast them through local governments. If we can find stakeholder organizations through partners with those organizations that allow us to get that message out there more forcefully, then we would do so. I sense that we're running out of time, Madam Chair, so I don't want to talk out the clock on my colleague here. Is there additional time, or are we?
No, time is up for Mr. Redekop. So now we will end our panel with Mr. Dhaliwal. Mr. Dhaliwal, you will have 4 minutes. You can please begin.
Thank you, Minister, for coming, and you're always accessible. I'm going to carry on with Brad's question on the Safe Third Country Agreement. It's my understanding there have been over 2.5 million individuals that have crossed into USA via the US-Mexico border in the past 12 months. Without the Safe Third Country Agreement, how would that potentially affect Canada?
Look, it's not just tied to folks who've come through the American border, but the likelihood is that we would see a significant further increase in the number of people who seek to come to Canada for the purpose of making an asylum claim. For people who wish to come to Canada, we want to encourage them to use regular migration pathways and discourage them from making an asylum claim unless they must. We really do abide by the principle where we encourage people to make an asylum claim in the first country where they are safe, because traveling through a country without status, though you may not be in a particular danger, is still not always a safe thing to do for individuals or families. So simply suspending the Safe Third Country Agreement, I expect would result in a significant increase of people making, in many instances, very dangerous journeys, not just through the United States, by the way, but through many other countries on a potential pathway to Canada.
Minister, do you have any thoughts that you wanted to share before I go to my next question?
Look, I'd rather deal with your questions, Mr. Dhaliwal.
Thank you. And you have already mentioned that you don't want to see people using the asylum seeker avenue to gain migration or immigration into Canada. But there are many, cases that have failed refugee claimant, and they've been in Canada for many, many years, and they're working there. And I already asked Ms. Fox and your deputy minister the same question. The only avenue that is left after the refugee claim is failed, asylum claim is failed, is the HNC. How would you see these people who have been working for so long, if we're not going to let them use any other avenue for them to get into the mainstream?
Well, look, thank you, Mr. Delawal, for the question. There are a significant number of people that are here, that have been here for many years, and many instances have children who are Canadian and who have been working and making a difference and contribution to our communities. We tried a few things over the past couple of years to provide status for certain individuals who currently don't have status. I'm thinking about the Guardian Angels program, which allowed frontline healthcare workers during the pandemic to become regularized, to recognize the contribution that they've made. I'm thinking about the pilot program for out-of-status construction workers in the GTA in Hamilton, which has allowed more people to come out of the shadows and to work in a regular way, where they're now contributing and paying taxes and are not afraid to seek basic services such as healthcare. We're looking for ways right now to make good on the mandate letter commitment that the Prime Minister's assigned to me, to expand on those pathways, to provide more regularization opportunities for individuals who are here making contributions and have deep connections to Canada, to allow them to live in dignity with a permanent residency status. This is not an easy issue to sort through. It requires serious consultation with different stakeholders and provincial and territorial governments as well. And we're going to continue to do our policy work to identify opportunities to provide pathways to permanent residency for some of those individuals that you've referenced.
Minister, I have met with the people from Quebec in the same situation. Most of them are into the trucking industry. I hope that you pay attention to that particular field as well. I seem like my time is going to be up. Please add your final comments if you have any.
Well, since you mentioned the trucking industry, though it's not on the question of asylum, I'd point out that just a couple of days ago, we launched a revision to the National Occupation Classification Codes that we've had in place, and truckers are now actually eligible to come to Canada through our express entry system. So we've now created a regular migration pathway for people who might want to come to Canada through federal economic streams, which may potentially further discourage people coming in an irregular way. We need to continue to be a compassionate country. We need to continue to abide by our domestic and our international legal obligations, and we need to continue to welcome people in regular ways while we respect the laws that bind us for those who are seeking here to escape vulnerable circumstances. It's been a pleasure to be with you all. I thank members of the committee and the chair for having me, and I'll look very, very much forward to our next opportunity to engage.
Thanks a lot, Minister. On behalf of all the members of this committee, I really want to thank you for all the work which you do on behalf of all Canadians, and thank you for appearing before the committee to provide your testimony in this important study. And thank you to everyone. Hope all of you will have a great weekend. And with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Merci tout le monde. À la prochaine.
Merci.
you.